quality pulp is necessary for quality paper. In this video, I will show you how to make paper pulp from the pseudo stems of ornamental bananas. We will collect, cook, rinse, and then pulp the fibers for paper making. The first step in this process is to select and cut suitable plants for processing. Make sure that you remove leaves and any dry outer layers from the plant. The trunk or the pseudostem of the plant is what is useful for paper making, and that is what you need to preserve. Did you know that some ornamental bananas taste like real bananas and have large black seeds in them? Did you know? In fact, they are not so tasty, and the annoying seeds make the experience a bit of a challenge, but it's worth a try. Did you also know that bees and small birds are known to frequent the plants for food? The second step in the process is to either chop or cut the stems into 1 to 1.5 inch segments. This, of course, helps to increase the surface area during cooking, in the cooking phase, and increases the removal of lignin. And lignin is actually that binding agent that keeps the cellulose fibers together in the plant. The objective of using the sodium hydroxide later to remove it is based on the concept of dissolving away the lignin from the plant. In the third phase, it's necessary that you wash the plant material to remove dirt or stones and any other foreign matter that may have gotten into the plant material when you were cutting it up. In this phase, it's also useful to break up the larger pieces to improve cooking time, so you need to make sure that you wash them thoroughly. Transfer the rinsed fibers into a stainless steel pot. Note that aluminum pots will react with the caustic soda, and that will actually degrade the pot. So make sure that when you use a pot, you use a stainless steel pot and leave enough space near the top to start the boil. To make the cooking solution, which can be anywhere from 3 to 5% sodium hydroxide, I prefer 3%, you need to weigh out 3 grams of caustic soda for every 100 milliliters of solution that you plan to make. If you're going to mix a 2000 milliliter solution, you're going to need approximately 60 grams. That is 3 grams in every 100, and that can be purchased, of course, at the supermarket in any chemical aisle as drain cleaner crystals, so it's something that is available readily. Once you add that to a container, you add water, make it up to the 2-liter mark, and at that point you're going to add enough water, stirring until you have dissolved all of the crystals and you've reached the mark. Continue adding more solution to the pot by mixing, and you're going to keep pouring it in until you just cover the plant pieces in the pot. That will eventually cook down. It's time to cook. Once the material has started to heat up, you need to constantly agitate it in the pot because you want to ensure that the pot doesn't boil over. You want the material to evenly boil, and therefore you continue to stir until it starts to boil. Once you have established a boil and a simmer, then you can actually leave the pot to boil and simmer for a period of time. But before that, ensure that you do not, and just to make sure you remember, do not leave the cover on the pot when you are simmering. It will boil over and spread some of the sodium hydroxide to other parts of the pot. So straight throughout the boil, ensure that you are constantly checking until the boil has been established, and then you're going to leave the pots open and continue to agitate until the material starts boiling on its own. Once the pot has settled and the boil has been established, you're going to leave it to boil for about 1 hour, or it can be a bit more than an hour, until all of the material has settled. It's time to rinse. Time to rinse all of your troubles away. Once the fiber has cooled overnight and now you are ready to get rid of the sodium hydroxide that has pulled out the lignin, you need to find at least a shear cloth. It's a nice material that allows the fibers to stay on one side and for you to rinse the sodium hydroxide through. And you're going to rinse the fibers over and over until you have removed a majority of the sodium hydroxide solution with the lignin from the material. This is a bit of a tedious task and it takes quite a bit of work and energy, but it is something that's necessary for you to have pulp that is without the sodium hydroxide and pulp that you can use later on to do bleaching and to make paper. So you want to remove as much of the sodium hydroxide as you can in the rinsing phase, and this takes quite a bit of water. Even in paper factories, it is quite a labor-intensive process that requires quite a bit of water, but make sure that you rinse it thoroughly. Alternately, you can use something like the cover for a fan, an old fan that's thrown away, with shear material. And if you actually soak the fibers in a lot of water, when you are rinsing, it makes it a bit easier to rinse. But just make sure that you're thorough in rinsing out as much water as you can. Paper pulp is a lignocellulosic fibrous material prepared by chemically or mechanically separating cellulose fibers from wood, fiber crops, waste paper, or rags. In the original Chinese method, fiber was placed with water in a stone mortar and pounded with mallets until it became pulp. Later on, the Colander beater was developed in Holland, and that enhanced the process of beating fibers in a shorter time. For today's procedures, we'll be using a regular blender with water and cooked fiber in order to beat it to a pulp. When using a regular blender, you want to ensure that you put about a handful or a little bit more of pulp material into the blender and add enough water to just cover it. In this case, I used a little bit too much water. The blender should actually skip once you are blending and give a beating effect. So if you don't have that beating effect, add a little bit more pulp and then commence blending. Once you have blended it sufficiently till it seems uniform and even, you are just about ready to pour that onto a shear material that would allow the water to drain through it, and then you can use that to rinse it thoroughly, because you still have a bit of sodium hydroxide in the pulp material that you need to eliminate. So spend some time rinsing it thoroughly. In order to separate the pulp, the dry mass of pulp, you want to squeeze out as much water as possible. So gather the ends of the shear material and you're going to continue to squeeze from different sides until you have enough of the water removed from the rinsed pulp. Next, place it on a table and spend some time pulling it apart to release the pulp. What you want to do is get some of those extra pieces of pulp that is stuck on the material off by using a piece of pulp to just pat the material. So you see me here touching the material with the pulp, and that helps to release the extra pieces onto the pulped mass. The pulp is then weighed for further use in bleaching studies or bleaching experiments. And now you have pulp. Good old pulp. I hope you have learned something in watching this video and that you will subscribe to my channel. I have some new videos coming up, and the first one that will follow this one is how to bleach materials. Thank you for watching.